You are watching Channel Adrian TV.
Yo, YouTube up. Welcome back to another sports reaction video. Now, this title is How the Bad Boy Pistons Turned into a Slop Bucket of Infighting. Now, y'all may not know this about me, but one of my favorite players is Zeke, and if you don't know him by his nickname, Isaiah Lord Thomas. And in my personal opinion, he's one of the best small guards to ever do it, because I know people will put Curry up there and Allen Iverson, but for what Isaiah Thomas to win back-to-back championships and against who he did against, the Lakers, the Celtics, and beating MJ, and to me personally, my favorite small guard to ever play in the NBA will be Isaiah Thomas. And you know, I got the ESPN 30 for 30 Bad Boy Pistons movie. A lot of people don't know that about me and surprised that I like Isaiah Thomas so much in the Pistons. It's because of the grit, the toughness. I know people were talking about it wasn't beautiful basketball, but back then in the 80s, a lot of people played like that. And then if you go to the gym and pick up, some old heads still play that way. But I really wanted to do this video because I love the Bad Boy Pistons, and even though the NBA season is over, I thought it'd be a great video to react to just because y'all do know I still love basketball.
For the majority of the 80s, NBA championship banners were either green and white or yellow and purple. But out in the middle of the country,
there they go.
Was happening. Okay, it
look at Zeke.
Look like much was happening, but in 1981, Jack McCluskey was brought in as GM. He built a lineup that would spend the better part of the decade clawing their way up the NBA mountainside. Nicknamed Trader Jack, he made 38 trades in 10 years. Their on-court leader was Isaiah Thomas.
There you go.
The little playmaker with an angelic smile.
And you saw in the beginning graphic how it showed Celtics, Lakers, Lakers, Celtics. The fact that he beat, think about all the Hall of Famers he beat. Irvin Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, Robert Parrish, all the other great players on the Lakers, Jordan. The list goes on. And for Isaiah Thomas to be only 6 foot and for him to win back-to-back champions. I know the Pistons had Vinnie Johnson. They had a lot of great role players, Dennis Rodman, John Sally. But it's fair to say Isaiah Thomas was the best player on that team. And to be honest, it was his team. So that's why I hold Isaiah Thomas so high in regard when we talk about basketball guards. Or honestly, all basketball players ever played in the NBA at all.
Joining him in the backcourt was
Joe Dumars.
Quiet and humble, he didn't need the spotlight, but it shined on him anyway. Completing the guard trio that was called the greatest ever,
Vinnie Johnson.
Microwave. He made himself a Detroit hero, hitting the 1990 Finals winning shot with 0.7 of a second left on the clock. Bill Laimbeer and Rick Mahorn were down low, giving the team their bad boys persona, and the rest of the NBA.
My bad, I forgot about. They just showed that clip. He went against Clyde Drexler and those Portland Trailblazers. See, Isaiah beat a lot of Hall of Famers.
A reason to stay out of the paint. Avoiding physical pain was the reason. And also, your shot wasn't going to go in. And also, you weren't going to get the rebound.
Bill Laimbeer.
Outside of Detroit, Laimbeer was reviled, but inside, he was venerated. They lost Rick Mahorn in the 89 expansion draft,
after that first championship.
Which brings me to James Edwards. A reserve elevated to the starting lineup in Mahorn's absence, and more minutes looked good on him. And then you had what Larry Bird dubbed the X Factor, John Sally and Dennis Rodman. An underdog team made up of underdogs found glory twice. In large part due to their kill or be killed, never say die mentality. Problem is, never saying die doesn't shove.
And Joe Dumars was small. They had a very small backcourt.
And after a while, when you're old and tired and beat up and kind of cranky and kind of angry, actually, maybe you do mutter the word die once or twice. Okay, so you look at the 90-91 season results and you see...
of course, the Bulls swept the Pistons,
and the Chicago Bulls swept Detroit out of the playoffs in the Eastern Conference Finals. You might conclude, MJ's so great, MJ's so good, he collapsed the Detroit Pistons. End of a simple story. But hang on, Jordan and the Bulls were very good, and they might have been what pushed the Pistons over the cliff, but the Pistons were already teetering on the edge of said cliff before the 1991 playoff Bulls showed up. In the 91 season, the Pistons were essentially tied for oldest team in the league, and it showed right away. The preseason was dominated by injuries to some of their best players. At the start of the season, a bunch of guys had bad backs, classic old man injury, and Detroit lost 7 of 8 at the start of December. Then, just as they were righting the ship, Isaiah Thomas broke his hand
Yeah.
and was out for 32 games. The team was a bit lost without
I
their
believe
leader.
that happened in the fight at
Joe
practice.
Dumars took on extra minutes, but that was kind of destroying his body. His toe was so swollen he couldn't get his shoe on, so he cut a hole in the shoe and played 41 plus minutes a game. You have to admire his heart, and
like I said, that's why I don't disrespect the older generation. Did you hear that? He cut a hole in his shoe so he could still play because his toe was so swollen. He needed some space to get so his foot could fit into the shoe. Hey, our old heads is different now.
fear for his body. When Thomas came back and the team still didn't win, Thomas went off on Detroit's new attitude. There was no fire. Where'd this apathy come from? Success. The Pistons were the hare that could sit back and relax and lose games during the regular season, while the tortoises of the NBA slow and steadied their way to a habit of winning. Thomas seemed to be the only one who remembered the hare lost the race, and things didn't magically turn around come playoff time. During Game 3 of the Eastern Conference semis, the Celtics were crushing the Pistons so badly that at one point the announcer simply said, "This is humiliation."
That is.
But Thomas hadn't said die yet. In Game 6, with almost every appendage
There you go,
injured,
IT.
he hoisted the team on his back and took over in the final minutes of overtime. Pistons advance. That game has been called the last great game of the Pistons bad boy era, which I'm afraid means...
Which, I'll look for that on YouTube. That's something I might want to react to.
Yeah, it gets worse.
Yeah, they got swept.
It was clear the Pistons had to make some moves to keep up with the Bulls and the rest of the league. And Jack McCluskey looked at camera and said, "That's why they call me Trader Jack," while doing finger guns. He immediately dumped two beloved and solid contributing members of the team, James Edwards and Vinnie Johnson.
Now, they said they had to keep up with the Bulls. If you remember in the ESPN 30 for 30 and also in the Michael Jordan's Last Dance doc, when Scottie Pippen came into his own, that's when, I don't care what the Pistons were able to do. When Scottie ascended, they didn't have enough talent to compete with Jordan and Scottie.
It was a blow to an already crushed morale. What was McCluskey thinking? Let's take it one case at a time. For James Edwards, the guy was turning 36, and the GM thought he had a perfectly capable, if not more than capable, replacement already on the roster, William Bedford.
And I haven't heard that name in a long time.
He's the guy who gave so little effort, Isaiah Thomas said he didn't deserve to wear Pistons across his chest just one summer ago.
Dang, I didn't know Isaiah was that cutthroat. For him to say that to the press.
But McCluskey really believed in Bedford, and really believed in his personal ability to turn Bedford around. Okay, so that's his logic on killing one family member. But what's all this about waving Vinnie Johnson? The guy who just a year ago won the finals with less than a second on the clock? The guy who in '91 was the leading scorer in the Bulls series. Well, he was turning 35 in the fall, and by waiving him, Detroit could take half his salary off their salary cap. McCluskey had no interest in a slow rebuild. He figured if his stars were getting older, he better hurry up and capitalize
now. Yeah.
The old win now mentality meant he needed salary cap space now to lure in some new pieces now. Sorry, legendary Detroit hero. Thanks for the championship.
Which I do understand that. If you got Isaiah and then still Joe Dumars, which will honestly your top stars of the team, even though Rodman was a star in his own right, Lambeer and all the others, you do got to try to find a way to win now. And that's a unfortunate thing about sports, because father time and money, and then when you have all these other teams catching up and getting better, at some point you're going to have to let go of key pieces. And Vinnie Johnson had to be one of them.
That salary cap space, McCluskey lured Orlando Woolridge, who was extremely productive the previous season with Denver, as well as Darrell Walker, a passionate defender who had a little bad boy attitude to him. With his new roster, the GM was confident the Pistons were title contenders once again. His confidence was perhaps misplaced. If you ask Isaiah Thomas what was going wrong, it was the new guys. The team couldn't generate offense, a role both Edwards and Johnson once filled. Wait, though, isn't Woolridge good at scoring? Well, Coach Chuck Daly, who wasn't in love with McCluskey's offseason moves, didn't know how to use him, or Walker. He tried having Woolridge come off the bench, but Woolridge couldn't get hot right away.
Which makes sense, because with that lineup, you're essentially only having one technically big out there. So you got to kind of run how people run now, small ball, 4 guards out, 1 in. And, the small forward kind of has to play like a guard. I'm never going to disrespect Chuck Daly's basketball IQ, but that wasn't his system that he was running. He always had 2 decent bigs, 2 on the block. So it was a little bit different.
And Daly would bench him for not producing. And the coach basically just didn't play Walker. The GM had no patience for the coach's struggles. But he was kind of done with Daly already. At the start of the 91-92 season, he hired Miami's coach to be the Pistons' color commentator, and also allowed him to watch practices.
All of prominent figures getting leaving.
Rothstein to a vulture, and Daly to carrion. So everyone, from the locker room to the sideline to the front office, was having just the time of their lives. Then, in January, news broke that Woolridge received a gigantic contract extension, and he received it during training camp, before ever playing a game for the Detroit Pistons. With this news, the locker room simply imploded.
That makes sense because, like you said, it says right there, more double than what Mark Aguirre makes. What Mark Aguirre with the seniority and then being the champion, I can understand why his feelings are hurt. Then on the flip side, I could understand is, how every year, more money. So odds are the player that's less than you or don't have the accolades you have is going to pay more because when things make more money, think about running backs in the NFL or how in the NBA, how the contract one person got a lot of times, the contract the next person is going to get in that same position is going to be more just because things get more money. I mean, just because how the CBA and people making more money, that's just how it goes. Like that, you see how, for example, the $5 million over 2 seasons with incentives. Some rookies get that with their signing bonus. Think about that. It's crazy how times have changed and money has changed.
Because you see, there were a few guys who had asked for bigger, longer contracts
and they didn't get them.
And had not received them. Guys who helped the team line the trophy case. And because it was a further insult to James Edwards and Vinnie Johnson. Woolridge's instant contract extension became a memo from management. It said, there will be no loyalty or appreciation for past efforts or accomplishments. Lambier explained, it was every man for himself in the Pistons camp.
And as the saying goes, we live in a world of what have you done for me lately? So loyalty is nice and all, but a lot of times when it comes to money and people's jobs on the line, that goes out the window.
And blamed McCluskey for everything. The GM wasn't super pleased with that, especially because after Lambier's comments, the Pistons restructured, forcing McCluskey to report to new president Tom Wilson.
And this is a tough situation. Being the management is going to be tough.
The Pistons entered the 92 playoffs with deep chemistry issues, offensive issues, and old man issues. They left the playoffs after the first round. Hadn't happened to them since 1986. The press declared the end of the Bad Boys era. As soon as the season ended, Chuck Daly resigned. He knew where he wasn't wanted. Rothstein took over a few weeks later. It looked like a rebuild was on the way. Rodman straight up said he didn't want to play in Detroit without Chuck. The coach was a father figure to him, and he resented the organization pushing
and they gave him his big break.
About a month later, McCluskey, who couldn't recover from Lambier's accusations, left for a job with the Timberwolves. Hired in his place, Billy McKinney made some quick moves. He traded Bedford for center Olden Polynice. He signed free agent Terry Mills, and traded away half of the Pistons' X Factor for future picks and a forward who, let me just tell you right now, didn't pan out. And that's all the moves the Pistons made. But most notable might be the move that wasn't made. Rodman, who said he wanted out, was still in, which had consequences. He played the first 4 games of the season, then hurt his knee, was cleared to play, but refused to go on a Western road trip with the team. As the season wore on, it was soon very clear the new coach wasn't working out. I'm not basing that on their record, which I could have, but I have more evidence. Half the team anonymously complained about the coach to the Detroit press.
And see, that's the thing I like about social media now. You get all these stories out there, and it's what I talked about in that last Kyrie Irving video. I'll leave that in the description. It's so hard to win not because of playing basketball, because of the politics and the managing emotions and different personalities. That's the hardest part.
And complained might be too gentle of a word. There was talk of mutiny. Oh, I almost forgot. Rodman came back in late November, but in early February he was again not playing. This time with a calf injury that his own teammates doubted. With the trade deadline around the corner, nobody expected Rodman to stay, but he did. As McKinney explained, Dennis clearly doesn't want to be here, but if we don't get a deal that's right for us, Dennis can stay here until he rots.
Dang.
Just really cool, great atmosphere in the Pistons camp. Wonderful work environment.
And the 80s and 90s was something else, because there's no way now you could say that to the press. It will be on so many podcasts. It'll be on X. It'll be on Instagram and social media. You couldn't say that now without some type of backlash.
They missed the playoffs by a game. So what was McKinney going to do for the 93-94 season? Rothstein was fired. Rodman was traded. And in a move that seemed to finally admit that, yeah, okay, maybe we do need to do a proper rebuild,
Allen
Detroit
Houston and
drafted
Lindsey
two
Hunter.
young guards to learn behind Isaiah Thomas and Joe Dumars. But the old guards didn't plan to go anywhere anytime soon. Thomas was in the last year of his contract, but he wasn't retiring. Both were all-stars last year, and Dumars had the most productive season of his career. Lambier, now 36, didn't plan to retire either, but he was shifting to a reserve role, which he was cool with. Only issue, he now scrimmaged with the reserve team in practices, so he was playing against Isaiah Thomas and the starters. What's wrong with that, you ask?
Yeah, they got in a fight, I believe.
Well,
yeah.
in the last practice of the 93-94 preseason, the punishing big man broke the starting point guard's rib while setting a pick on the starting point guard.
Yeah.
Isaiah was livid, and he would have fought Lambier, but the whole rib just broke thing prevented that sort of movement. And if you can believe it, that was not the only Pistons controversy of the preseason. Occasional starter Alvin Robertson, who Billy McKinney brought on last season to infuse some enthusiasm into the team, strangled Billy McKinney during a different preseason practice.
The
executive had been questioning Robertson's back injury, and Robertson did not appreciate that. Though, can you really strangle someone so hard that several professional athletes need to pull you off of them if your back is injured? I'm just asking. Robertson was suspended indefinitely. The Warring Pistons sputtered out to a 2-4 record. Then, at a mid-November practice, Lambier again stuck an elbow in Isaiah's ribs while setting a pick. He didn't break anything this time, which was good.
I think Isaiah swung at him.
Also bad. Good because Isaiah's ribs were intact. Bad because Isaiah was physically capable of fighting Lambier.
Yeah.
He punched him in the back of the head, breaking his own hand on
the I said that. Skull. I knew how he broke his hand by fighting Lambier.
He was pouring champagne on that same skull. Both guys got destroyed in the press. Isaiah's a sneaky little sucker puncher, and Lambier's had this coming for years. 6 games later, Lambier retired. The Pistons in the center tried to claim it wasn't due to the fight, but nobody bought it.
Yeah,
it's not how you want a former champion to go out. But the season must go on. Even though the Pistons only had one true center left, and were really bad. In December and January, they won 4 games in total. Injuries piled up. Dumars had strained his hamstring. Thomas's hand was healed, but his foot was messed up.
I know Isaiah tears his ACL.
Which wouldn't have affected the team too badly if they were truly in
at some point
mode
he didn't retire.
But Dumars and Thomas were still the core, still playing about 40 minutes a night, still fighting through injuries to stay on the court. Oh, also, their only center tore his MCL. That didn't help. They lost a game by 44 points in February. As long as I'm piling on, I figured I'd mention that. In March, they finally threw in the towel on the season, sitting Dumars and Thomas and letting the new kids get some playing time. Losing and sitting wasn't super fun for Thomas, who talked about retiring. Then he tore his Achilles in April, and the decision was made.
When he retired, I knew it was that.
Joe Dumars was the only bad boy left standing. Though I wouldn't blame him if he wanted to sit down. The Pistons finished the 94 season 20-62. Bright side, that did allow them to draft Grant Hill 3rd overall and usher in new, brighter years. Figuratively, they won more. And literally. Look at those jerseys. Hill led the team back to the
Which that jersey is one of the hardest jerseys in NBA history. That and the Toronto Raptors purple jersey. I'll always love those two retro jerseys.
Side of 500, while Dumars contributed much more than his age should have allowed. But
oh, and also the old school Team Mac jerseys when they were at Orlando with the stars on it. That's from my childhood. Those ones were dope too.
Detroit still couldn't get over the hump. There were no deep playoff runs and sometimes no playoffs at all. After another first-round exit in '99, Dumars called it quits on his playing career.
And I know he started doing the GM after that.
Of a team long ago declared dead. Because when they were declared dead, the corpse was still flopping around while the front office tried to revive it, cutting off certain limbs and injecting new life here and there. But being injected into a corpse was bad for the new life. There's disease and bacteria in there. And apparently flopping around was bad for the corpse itself. Bodily harm was inevitable. But in the summer of 2000, Joe Dumars was like, I am pretty young, not a corpse. He rejoined the Pistons as president of basketball operations.
I knew it was something like that,
and he immediately traded away Grant Hill for Ben Wallace and Chucky Atkins. It wasn't regarded as a good trade for Detroit. But perhaps by being a part of one of the greatest defensive teams in history, propelled by underdogs, made Dumars capable of recognizing an underdog who could command a team with defensive prowess and bring glory to Detroit again.
Which he was able to do when that Detroit Pistons beat the Los Angeles Lakers. And it's sad because the Bad Boy Pistons is one of my favorite teams. And it just goes to show you, it's so hard to win. It's even harder to keep the team together to win back-to-back titles. That's why you do have to give respect to Golden State and what they're able to do. The Spurs, the Lakers, all these great organizations who are able to win multiple championships and win back-to-back. Now, I know some of you may be saying the draft has been rigged for a long time. We'll get into that in another video. But if you want sports reviews, sneaker reviews, morning motivation, Sunday motivation to get you through the week, reaction videos of police body cams, relationship dating, anything you could think of, subscribe to Channel Adrian TV.